I just wonder if they're going to turn it on or not. Probably not.
चलिए शुरू करते हैं। सिनेमा वो है जो किसी भाषा में नहीं बनती, किसी देश की सीमा को नहीं मानती, और यही बानगी इस वक्त हम देख सकते हैं इफी 2019 के मंच पर। एक बहुत ही खास संस्करण फेस टू फेस इफी 2019 के साथ हम हाजिर हैं। बहुत ही खास इसलिए क्योंकि हमारे साथ बहुत ही खास मेहमान जुड़ गए हैं जो दुनिया भर से यहाँ पहुँचे हैं इफी के मंच पर। और ये सीधा प्रसारण आप देख रहे हैं इस वक्त पणजी गोवा से तमाम उन सोशल मीडिया यूजर्स के लिए है जो इस वक्त इफी 2019 का हिस्सा नहीं बन पा रहे। सीधे इस प्लेटफॉर्म के जरिए आप हमसे सवाल पूछ सकते हैं और वो सवाल हम अपने खास मेहमान से पूछेंगे। तो आइए सबसे पहले आपको मुखातिब करा देती हूँ आज के हमारे खास मेहमान से। आज हमारे साथ जुड़ रहे हैं मिस्टर जॉन बेली, world renowned cinematographer and the jury head of IFFI 2019 Golden Jubilee Edition। साथ ही हमारे साथ हैं विख्यात फिल्म एडिटर कैरल लिटल्टन और हमारे साथ हैं मशहूर निर्माता निर्देशक रमेश सिप्पी साहब और अभिनेत्री मशहूर अभिनेत्री किरण जुनेजा जी। Welcome to all of you. It's a live broadcast for our special broadcast for our social media users. We are live on the official YouTube, Twitter and Facebook channel of Ministry of Information and Broadcasting, and there are live questions coming for all of you. So let's start, because the platform for IFFI 2019. My first question to you is Mr. John Bailey. Tell us about IFFI 2019, your experience till now. You are the head of jury of international competition. You're watching films day and night. How was the experience here, coming to Goa and being part of IFFI 2019?
I can't tell you what it's like in Goa because I've seen nothing except a screening room. You know, I mean, Ramesh and I have been for 10 hours a day, 11 hours a day. We've been looking at about 4 movies a day. And then we ride from the hotel to the screening room, and then from the screening room back to the hotel. Carol's seen a little bit more than I have. I haven't been to any of the other theaters, but I've been looking at the screening schedule. And it's very impressive how many films, how varied the films are in terms of the countries, the genre, the different genres, and that's really wonderful because a lot of film festivals have a very narrow focus, you know, and that's fine, but this is truly a world international film festival, and that's been very exciting to see films from so many different countries in so many different styles in 6 days or something is really remarkable.
That's an amazing lineup of films. If you talk about the canvas of films here in IFFI this year, is very remarkable because it's like 90 Indian premieres this time in IFFI 2019. Yes. Carol, if you have to talk about your experience at IFFI 2019, we had an Oscar retrospective here at IFFI 2019, and Casablanca was screened, and you had a conversation session also where people asked you questions. How was the experience here at IFFI 2019?
Oh, I've had a wonderful time. I haven't been able to be with these guys, but I've gone to movies on my own.
Yes.
And like John says, the variety is truly an international film festival. The people who are on the selection committee are to be commended. They've done a great job. And it's interesting, when you've gone to enough films, you begin to see that certain themes are emerging that are in common. And if I could just say, I saw Parasite, which is a South Korean film. Yeah. And then yesterday I saw Gully Boy, and although they're completely different, they deal with many of the same themes. So it was just really sort of fascinating to see how the themes of social justice and inequality of incomes is approached in both cases, and completely different. I thought Gully Boy was fantastic. It was really fun.
That's India's Oscar entry this year.
Yes, it is. It's the selection, yeah. And seeing it with an Indian audience was just perfect.
How was the Indian audience? They make noise at the
they enjoyed it. They enjoyed it. It was great entertainment, and they got the humor. They on all levels, they just enjoyed it. It was wonderful.
You have to understand that the Oscar-submitted films are seen in one of the 2 Academy theaters with a group of only Academy members. So they're not real, it's not a real audience. So for Carol to see, for any of us to see any Oscar-submitted film in the country of its origin with an audience that is enthusiastic and understands the film is a rare privilege. I really wish I had gone last
I
night.
had a true experience of movie watching in India.
I had a real Goa experience, I say. It was fantastic.
रमेश सर, आप बताइए, आप भी जूरी के सदस्य हैं
जी।
और किस तरह की फिल्मों का कैनवस इस बार आप देख रहे हैं इफ्फी के मंच पर?
बहुत अच्छा लग रहा है। अलग अलग देश से अलग अलग कहानियां आ रही हैं, लेकिन जैसे कैरल ने कहा, थीम लगभग वही थीम्स हैं जो exploitation of women and how to deal with these problems, and some have done it in a very pleasant way, and some are dealing with the real issues. So it's nice to see all kinds of treatments for different for the same theme in a different way. Yes.
Okay. Kiran ma'am, your experience at IFFI 2019 is we have completed 50 years, and the other directors, the other makers, was your as an actor perspective, how do you see the journey of IFFI, the kind of films here and experience here at this 50th year?
Well, what I'm seeing more and more is that in a lot of films, women are getting very prominent roles, which was not so in the till the recent past. And also I'm seeing a lot of women themes, like Ramesh also said, and you also said, there are a lot of women themes, stories based on the women problems and their enlightenment and how they're coming out of it and all. So as a woman, as an actor, it's great to see great performances coming from some women, and some of the films I saw was amazing, and the characters were played so beautifully by these actresses. So I'm really looking at it as an actor and seeing the growth and seeing the opportunity that the actresses are getting today were not as much there even maybe 10 years ago, 5 years ago. So it's a great time for women to be in the entertainment business and to be an actor.
इस बार खास तौर पर 50 फिल्में दिखाई जा रही हैं women directors की, 50 women directors films are being screened.
We're actually seeing films that were in our two competition categories where women are truly the lead characters. They're women's stories. The women are the stars, not the co-stars, not the supporting stars. They are the stars. I mean, just to take two cases in point, the Canadian film Antigone about a young girl. She really is the center of the movie. Also Cleo, another film. A number of the films. It's been really inspiring to see after all of the gender politics that we've been having the last few years that has caused so many polarized feelings. To actually see us starting to come out on the other side of that with actual films that are significant and important films that are realizing the potential of women roles.
Okay, now we're taking questions from social media. There's a question for Carol on Instagram by Gitika, and said, at what moment you realize that your big part of life will be spent in the editing room? Your obsession with editing started in France, I guess.
Well, I've studied literature in France. I didn't start working in film until I met this guy. And so I was corrupted by film. And I think early on I realized that what John was doing was much more interesting than what I could have been doing had I stayed in university studies. So I thought, that's really much more interesting. I think I'll change tracks and start working in film. And early on, I went into a cutting room and it was all over. I like this place. I want to stay here.
Okay, there's a similar question for you, Carol. Say, how much freedom does a director give a cinematographer and an editor in the creative process of filmmaking, knowing that it is a collaborative work? How do you come to terms with different opinions?
Head to head. I think from the very beginning, when you have a good relationship with the director, it's all about making the best film possible. It's not about there's no scorecard. I had more decisions today than you had. No, I had more decisions yesterday than you had. No, it's not about keeping score. It's about putting our heads together and coming up with a third idea that's better than what either of us could have done on our own. Just make the best movie we can.
Okay. So there's a question for you. You worked as a veteran documentary cameraman for A Brief History of Time and Michael Jordan to the max. Has there been a greater focus on documentaries today?
I think we are right now in a golden age of documentary filmmaking. Michael Moore was a pioneer with that in terms of making the documentaries mainstream for theatrical audiences, making them very accessible as opposed to a kind of educational or news type genre. So we are seeing more and more documentaries released the same way that fiction, theatrical films are released. What I have found so interesting in the last 15 years or so is how a fictional theatrical filmmaking and documentary filmmaking styles, the two styles, are starting to overlap and kind of fuse with one another. For instance, a lot of fictional theatrical films with actors and a screenplay try to achieve a level of reality by using documentary techniques. And a lot of documentary films are using recreation with actors and theatrical lighting and editing to expand the limits of the straight documentary style. And we have people like Errol Morris, who started very controversially in the early 1990s using that style. And now it's become part of the normal grammar that we use. Nobody challenges anymore recreation in documentaries. And you look at some of these documentaries and they look just like fictional feature films. So it's interesting. There's a kind of a fusion that's happening. And so with a lot of cinematographers, a lot of it started in documentaries. I started in documentaries. My friend Roger Deakins started in documentaries. Many of us, and we have our heart is still very much in documentaries.
Lots of Indian directors, ace directors also started their career in documentaries like Kabir Khan and other ace directors. Ramesh sir, ये आपके लिए सवाल है दीक्षा का. You have been so many movies from across the countries, industries. किस तरह से अब भारतीय सिनेमा जो बदलाव आ रहा है उसको आप देखते हैं?
बदलाव तो आना भी चाहिए. बहुत अच्छा लग रहा है. हमने जब शोले बनाई तो तब भी एक बदलाव हुआ. तो अच्छा है कि आजकल इतने यंग मूवी मेकर्स जो आज आ रहे हैं वो नई आइडियाज के साथ आएं और नए तरीके से फिल्में बनाएं.
इस पे सुजानी आपसे पूछना चाह रही है इंस्टाग्राम पे कि व्हाई डोंट यू मेक अ कमबैक विद अनदर मास्टरपीस ऑफ इंडियन सिनेमा लाइक शोले.
देखिए, शोले जैसी फिल्म आप टेक्निकली और इस तरीके से ज़रूर बना सकते हैं. अच्छे आर्टिस्ट मिल जाएं आपको और अच्छी कहानी हो, अच्छे, तो वो तो सब हो सकता है. बट टू गो अहेड एंड मेक ए फिल्म विच बिकम्स शोले is quite another thing, because a phenomenon cannot be explained. It's a lovely film, it's a well-made film, but it becomes a phenomenon because something in it which you don't understand completely has taken over.
आप कोई नई फिल्म बना सकते हैं, शोले को दोबारा नहीं बना सकते.
सही बात, बिल्कुल सही कहा आपने. शोले को दोबारा नहीं बना सकते, और क्यों बनाएं? कुछ और बना सकते हैं, वो शायद शोले बन जाए.
There's a question on Instagram. Samuel पूछना चाहते हैं किरण मैम से, you have played amazing roles as an actress in your life. Bunyad was the collaborated work of yours and Ramesh Sippy ji. So when can we see you again playing an important role on big screen? And another collaboration with Ramesh sir.
I'm also waiting. So
Let's hope it will be in the near future.
Let's hope it's in the near future. Something is bubbling there. So I hope in the next few years you will see something that we will be doing together, me as an actor and he as a director.
Ramesh sir, एक सवाल है कि you have made hit roles like Bunyad and some blockbusters like Sholay. How has been working in TV and film been different? दो different mediums हैं, लेकिन काम कितना अलग होता है?
The main thing about both any medium is good storytelling. You do it on television, it'll work. You do it on cinema, it'll work. Now the web series, the internet has come in. Wherever you tell a story, wherever you want to work, the storytelling part will always be a major role player for what you want to do. And good editing, good camera work, good all the technical aspects being right. The story, everyone wants that story to be told best possible. So for that, I think we're all the same.
I want to ask on Facebook a very interesting question to Carol. You have a wonderful talent for editing. Why don't you open an editing school or organization in India?
There's one thing about editing is quite a different thing to teach editing. So
There's one more who's asking how to sharpen editing skills apart from reading, watching films and movies. How he can sharpen his editing skills.
I think the best thing is just to do it again and again and again. Editing is like writing. You get better at it as you do it again and again.
Absolutely.
Could I just say something about that?
Sure.
Because one of the fascinating things about editing is in the process of editing a film, you edit one version, then you make changes. You edit it again. You keep working the materials. There's an incredible sort of energy and insight and experience curve that you get even on one film. You know, in cinematography, it's very different. We show up the morning, we have to make decisions about every shot. You shoot it, that's it. You know, very seldom do you get to go back and say, oh, I wanted to do it differently. You know, very seldom. It's a fundamental difference. I mean, I, as a cinematographer in a way, envy the experience that editors are able to have.
I think if I can add to that, the cinematographer has an opportunity before he goes on the set to do all his thinking. The editor has an advantage. The finished product is almost coming to the editor and has a lot more to work with. And as he said correctly, they can make changes without too much cost.
Yeah,
It's just
or consequence. We can try things. It's a laboratory. Editing room is like a big laboratory. You can experiment.
You know, one of the things that's so fascinating about Carol and me, having worked together on so many films, is we feel it is a synergy, an experience that compounds itself as a very positive experience. It's not always easy to convince a director or a producer that is really good, because sometimes they feel, oh, you know, they're going to be talking at night and blah, 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 and they lose control. You know, so it depends really on the director, how secure the director can be, because, you know, there have been times when Carol and I have not been offered the same film, even though we might have been interviewed for it, just because of that anxiety. Other times, when working with somebody like Larry Kasdan, he sees that as a real asset. And so we've done a number of films with Larry.
There's a question for you, John. Mr. John Bailey, how do you see challenges and difficulties in your role in time of web series? With so many mediums coming out, so do you think it's challenging? You have to work more, or reinventing yourself to adapt to the new challenges?
The new technology, you mean like new equipment?
And the web series, new mediums, like you have 3 hours to work in a film, but web series are shorter. And there's time constraints, all those things.
Well, you know, every generation has to experience changes in technology. I mean, there's nothing that was more cataclysmic to the motion picture industry than the precipitous change from silent to sound cinema. And if you really study the sophistication of the late silent era and how glorious and complete those films were, and how awkward the first few years of sound films were, you understand the revolutionary change that had to happen creatively to use the technology. And so there's always that challenge. And you know, people speak about the evolution toward digital technology as though it's something that's never happened before. Every generation faces new technology and new challenges, whether it was the studio system having to face television, whether it was then later on dealing with pay TV or cable, now streaming and web thing. It's an opportunity as well as a challenge. What it allows you to do is find, as Ramesh said, new ways of telling stories. And that's what we're all storytellers.
वेब सीरीज का इस वक्त चलन आ गया है
जी, अब इस वक्त तो काफ़ी क्रेज़ हो गया है और एक नई चीज़ आ गई है, तो घर में बैठकर कोई भी फिल्म कभी भी देख लो, अपने मर्जी से अपने टाइम पे देख लो, तो वो तो फैसिनेटिंग है और चैलेंजिंग भी है। ऑडियंस को ज़्यादा मज़ा भी आ रहा है और जो बना रहे हैं उनके लिए डेफिनेटली ज़्यादा चैलेंजिंग है कि कैसे, क्या एक कहानी हम 1 घंटे में बनाएं या वही कहानी को हम 10 हिस्सों में बनाएं।
अभिनेत्री के लिए, अभिनेता के लिए भी एक बेहतर समय है इस वक्त, क्योंकि सिर्फ बड़ा पर्दा नहीं, छोटा पर्दा नहीं, बहुत से ऐसे और माध्यम आ गए हैं जहां पर आपको अवसर मिलेंगे, अपॉर्चुनिटीज मिलेंगी।
So what I'm seeing here is the advantage is that at least at the moment when you're shooting web series, you're looking at real faces. So what is happening is that artists who were not able to get great roles because they didn't fit into the typical look of a hero or a heroine, or or they are older, or they are kind of they are getting great opportunities, fabulous roles to play, and age is not a bar there, because you're seeing women of all ages performing and doing great roles, which the opportunity in films is far less. So I think web series is fantastic.
Carol ma'am, at your conversation at the time of screening of Casablanca, you were sharing anecdotes from your years of work there, and how, so just share some of the anecdotes with our audience today also. You were remembering you worked on the restored version of the classic Casablanca, and you were remembering those days and how mishaps used to happen, and you shared about the Alfred Hitchcock also, you mentioned something like that.
Oh, about, yes, well, there are a lot of interesting things about Casablanca that are sort of behind the scenes stories. One of them is that Humphrey Bogart was actually about 3 inches shorter, or 1.5 inches, anyway, shorter than Ingrid Bergman. So every time they were in a scene together, they had to put him on an apple box, on a riser, or sit on a cushion, so that he would appear to be taller and more powerful. And I think also that, the sort of, the fact that there were so many immigrants on the cast. We realized the film was made in 1942, only 1 year or less than a year after we had entered World War II. And before that, just several years before that, many immigrants came from European countries, Germany, Romania, some from France, and many of those were starring in that movie. And one reason that all the parts are strong is because every role was filled with a primo actor. And I think that's one reason why Casablanca is a perennial film, is that it's so well acted. It's amazing.
And it opened to packed houses here at IFFI. It's a film made in 1942, and there was so much of rush here in IFFI for the viewing of the film. Mr. John Welly, sir, you have been associated with Academy and credited with Cannes. How do you find Indian cinema, the present Indian cinema, the new wave Indian cinema, where Indian films are going all over the world, various different festivals? There are 2 Indian films in the international competition section also. Tell us about your take on it.
I certainly do not try to present myself as knowing very much about Indian cinema. This has been really fascinating for Carol and me, because we've seen a number of Indian films here that were in both the debut and in the competitive the sections. And each of the Indian films that we saw was completely different. And each of them broke the stereotype of what I think many Americans think Indian films are. We think they're either Satyajit Ray from the 50s and 60s or contemporary Bollywood films. And that's sort of what most of us have known about Indian cinema. So to see the kind of variety of films, we knew from our trip here in May, we discovered, that there are close to 2,000 films being made in this country every year, far more than any country in the world, certainly 3 and 4 times more than the United States, and that they're being made in 24 languages. And they're each their own worlds in a way. And that's absolutely fascinating. And to see the the different regions of the country that have their own, not just language, but their own culture and their own sense of the land and the way people live in the land is absolutely incredible, because we in America don't have that. You know, we talk a lot about blending in. People come, we want them to become homogenized. And if they maintain the integrity and the identity of their own culture, we don't like that very much. Everybody should become, what the word is, assimilated.
Yes.
You know, we still have, you know, enclaves of the cultures, but I mean, one of the things that I think is so great about Indian cinema is how broad the cultures are.
Yeah.
And that is something that, you know, should, and it seems to me this is something that is continuing to be supported by the government and should be supported by the government.
This is a finale question for Carol and Mr. John. Is there any chance where we can watch your collaborative work with Indian cinema? Any plans to collaborate with Indian cinema, with Indian filmmakers, or something you want to plan to do in
I think it
India?
would be great.
Does
I hadn't
somebody
thought of
want to
that.
ask us? Does somebody want to ask us to do a film here? I think it'd be
It'd
fascinating.
be great. It'd be fascinating.
Offer.
I mean, you know, in 1984, I made a film with Paul Schrader in Japan called Mishima. It was in Japanese language. My entire crew was Japanese. You know, it was one of the most amazing experiences of my life. I've treasured. I mean, the opportunity to work in cinema, you know, in a different language, in a different culture, you know, I mean, it would be a challenge, but it would be an incredible opportunity. Sure.
सिपी सर, मिस्टर जॉन मैली ने रीजनल सिनेमा की बात कही, कितना बड़ा कैनवस है भारतीय सिनेमा का। हम देख रहे हैं कि इफ़ी के मंच में हम कह सकते हैं कि वैश्विक पहचान मिल रही है, खासतौर पर रीजनल सिनेमा को। अब बॉलीवुड की बात नहीं होती है, भारतीय सिनेमा की बात होती है, तो आपका क्या उस पर प्रतिक्रिया रहेगी? किस तरह से क्षेत्रीय सिनेमा का हमने देखा है काफ़ी जो उत्थान देखा है?
रीजनल सिनेमा भी मैं देख रहा हूँ, काफ़ी अच्छी फिल्में बन रही हैं और बढ़िया कैनवस पे बन रही हैं। हमने कभी गुजरात से फिल्म देखी, वेरी नाइस। आई मीन it's got that folklore feel, it's got color, and it's got, I mean, everything's there in that film. So I'm sure it is, it's very much on the list. It will show up, I'm sure.
And we have just realized that we have the whole film team in this stream right now. We have the director, we have the editor, we have the cinematographer, we have the actress.
Well, I guess we better go make a movie.
Yes, that's what we were talking about. He said you need to offer.
No, it's true, you know. I mean, my friend Werner Herzog, you know, Werner makes films where his crew's only 3 or 4 people. You know, he does that. You know, I mean, it is possible. That's one of the great things about documentaries as well, because you basically normally have a very small crew, and they're very tightly committed to the vision of the film. The problem we have in Hollywood, and I don't know if it's true here so much, but our crews are so large. It's hard. You spend so much of your time trying to coordinate and supervise the crew. And in a lot of Hollywood films, the major job of the director of photography is administering the crew and not the creative work of lighting. A lot of it is logistical. You know, I mean, that's a simple fact.
So it was such a special session. Wow, what a session we had this time for the finale of Face to Face IFFI 2019. Thank you all of you for joining us in this special broadcast, and I'm honored to be here with all of you people.
Thank
और
you.
आज के हमारे इस खास एपिसोड में इतना ही स्पेशल इनिशिएटिव था न्यू मीडिया विंग की ओर से, और हम फिर लौटेंगे बहुत जल्द IFFI के और बहुत ही खास अनुष्ठान के साथ। फिलहाल मुझे पूरी टीम को दीजिए इजाजत। नमस्कार।